Do you know the feeling of coming up with a new goal and feeling super excited about it? You write it down, you visualize it, you think about it all the time, and you maybe even tell your friends. You feel like this is going to change my life. And then all of a sudden that goal you came up with starts to seem so far away. Worries start popping up in your mind, and you find yourself questioning if you right there by yourself are even having the slightest chance of getting there. And you start skipping what you initially set out to do. Skipping becomes a habit, and you, who felt so motivated in the beginning, start feeling stuck, not knowing how to move forward. Well, my friends, I know how it feels, and there are actually some pretty good reasons on why so many of us are experiencing situations like these. The underlying reason is actually how our brains are functioning, and because I'm nowhere near a neuroscientist, I did some research and found out about Dr. Julia Ravey. Julia has a PhD in neuroscience, has written her first book, Brain Tenants, also makes YouTube videos about how we can better understand the function of our brains, and is currently working at BBC, where she brings science stories to life on screen and through sound. She also likes to be called DJ Rave. Whenever we are coming up with a new goal, like wanting something very specific, like for me, let's take the example of wanting 50k subscribers, especially when we're starting out and still are very far away from this goal, it can seem a bit discouraging at times. So Julia, my first question to you is, what do we need to understand about goals, and how can we set them in a better way?
Yeah, there's two types of goals in psychology. There's performance-based goals and mastery-based goals. A performance-based are focused on the outcome, the 50k subscribers. That's what I want. And then the mastery-based goals are based on skill. I want to get better at YouTube. They're the two differences. So it's the same goal, but it's looking at it in two different ways. Now, performance goals can be a good thing to have. They can be a good measure to show you are getting to where you want to be. But if you are just looking at that every day and you're looking at your subscribers and going, I want 50,000 and I'm on 200, then it's highlighting that gap, and it's easier to see failure as failure. If you're trying to run your fastest time 100 meters and you don't hit it, if you're going for the fastest time as the goal, then you go, well, I failed. So it's much easier, I think, to give up and to not have the staying power if that's what you're focusing on. If you're on the mastery side of things and you're thinking more about the skills, failure doesn't become a sign to stop. Failure just becomes part of the process. So if your goal is, I want to get better at YouTube, then it doesn't really matter the subscribers you have. If you're seeing some sort of upward trend, that might be a sign, but more of, you can look at your video and go, from the last one, was I better in the next one? Yeah, or what are the points I can improve on? If a video like tanked, it wouldn't be the case that, oh my God, I'm rubbish at this. It's like, what was the difference in this video compared to one that's doing well? And you can then look for things to improve on. I think it's natural to have performance-based goals. I think that's what we will arrive to, because when we think about what we want our lives to be, I think we naturally look to achievement. So you can start with the achievement, really think about why is it that I want that thing? Because a lot of the times we absorb goals from other people, and we absorb goals from our school or, the society that we're in. So really think, is that actually what I want? But once you come to the conclusion of, yeah, I really want that thing, then you can flip it into a more mastery-based goal and think about, what are the skills that I would need to be at that level, and how can I start building them today? I think you've got to sort of take that goal, break it down into what are all the steps that I need to get there, and then forget about it all except for that very first step, and then think, what are the skills I need to get to that step? And then you go to the next, and you can check in with the big goal every now and then and think, is this still what I want? Am I still heading in that direction? But you're taking the focus to something that is actually actionable, something that's doable, and then focusing on building up skills. And that way failure doesn't seem so much as a big sort of like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it.
Why is it actually so hard for us to do something which doesn't have any instant reward in the present moment, but we know will probably pay off in the long term? Is there any way that we can kind of trick our brain so we can actually do this thing which seems very hard in the moment, but will probably pay off in the long term.
The brain is weighing up every single option in front of it. It's putting a value on everything. So it's going, okay, is this option really going to be good for us right now? Or is this option going to be the better for us right now? And for a lot of our long-term goals, those options that we need to take are the ones that aren't rewarding right now, but they will bring us reward in the future. So the brain in that instance is going, well, duh, like you're not going to want to do that because you're not going to get anything from it right now. It's going to go for the more rewarding option in the present moment. So it's an interesting one, but I think we can definitely bring in an element of reward to everything we do, and we can orchestrate our own reward, which will hopefully help to reinforce behavior. So if you're rewarded for eating the chocolate, you're going to want to eat the chocolate again. And you can take that principle and then apply it to other things in your life that you're trying to do. If you're trying to go to the gym more, a lot of the time when you're first starting out on that, it's not inherently pleasant. You know, it's quite a lot of effort goes into it. The brain sees effort as energy. And, you know, am I going to spend the energy putting the effort into that thing? It best brings something back to me. When we first start out with a goal, we have the lovely overall vision of, okay, I'm motivated. I'm going to go to the gym. It's going to change my life. And that vision can keep the motivation up for a while. So we can go to the gym. We can override this short term. That's not going to inherently be rewarding, but in the long run it will. We can override that for a while. But then all of a sudden, we'll start to get the feedback from the brain of, you've been doing this now for a few weeks and you're not seeing what you want to see. Even though we know it might take longer, it is quite natural to have that feedback and be like, okay, we need to stop because we're putting in all this effort and nothing's coming back to us. So I like to instead try to just focus on reinforcing the behavior that is going to the gym. Forget about the big overall goal and results and focus on the gym itself, because you know that if you do that over a longer period of time, you will build the strength. Say, if that's your goal, you'll build the strength that you want to build up. And to make that rewarding, I try and think the brain is not going to inherently reward me. It will in some way, you know, when you're doing exercise, you do naturally get that element of reward after exercise. But it might be still hard to convince the brain to actually be like, oh, I really want to go and do that today. So there's a few things you can do. One method is called temptation bundling. And that is where you take something you really enjoy and attach it to something that you want to do, but find it a bit difficult to do. The gym is a perfect example because I do this all the time. I've got a couple of podcasts that I only listen to when I go to the gym, and there's two of them. And these two podcasts, I really enjoy them, but I will not let myself listen to them unless I'm at the gym or on a run. And what that does is it makes me go, when I'm like, oh, should I go to the gym today? And I go, do you know what? You get to listen to that podcast. And it just makes it a little bit easier to go and do. The other thing is to also tie maybe an element of reward at the end of the workout. I think you can do this in two ways. So the habit sort of formation in the brain, the way in which we form quite automatic behaviors, is we have a stimulus, so something that's like, you know, an identifier, a behavior, and then rewards, and that reinforces certain behaviors over and over. And then once you do them enough, you will just start to do them automatically. And so this is something that some people like to call like tiny habits, like really, really small habits. So you can sort of try and do that. If you want to do like one press up, you can then celebrate straight afterwards, like, yeah, I did it. That's giving yourself like a fake reward, and you're giving yourself that fake celebration. And over time, you won't need to do that reward anymore because you'll start to reinforce. You know, it could be like, I put the kettle on and I'll do a press up. So the kettle is the stimulus, is the cue. The press up is the action, and the little cheer at the end is the reward. So that's if you want to build really small habits, which I think is so valuable. But then if overall, say it's something like go to the gym, it's a bit harder to do that. I mean, after every like time you press a weight, you go, yeah, like, I don't know, like it's a little bit harder. So what I like to do is at the end of this gym session is to give myself a reward. So I have the temptation bundling of like, I can listen to something in the gym, but I also like, I now love to just get a really nice coffee after I've been to the gym. So I think you can sort of look at the habit loop and take it a bit of a step out and think about, okay, the action is go to the gym. Can I tag something on the end of that I'm going to actually really enjoy doing? You could meet up with a friend or something like that. So yeah, I think those are a few ways to get in the back door of the brain and make it a little bit smoother to do what you actually want to do.
How can we actually keep going when something seems very hard? And how can we reduce the feeling of overwhelm to get ourselves started?
I sort of do the equivalent of like exercise. And when I'm out on a run, you know, when you really want to stop and I go, come on, just do another 20 seconds. And I say to myself, the next run you do, it'll be easier because you've just done that. And you sort of compensate for yourself and say, the reason that this is hard now will pay off at some point in the future. So I think that's a way in which you can coach yourself through a time which you find hard. But yeah, the only way in which to build resilience is to put yourself in a position where you feel uncomfortable and meddle through it and just go, okay, I sort of got through that then. It wasn't perfect, but I did get through it. And overwhelm, yeah, completely. Again, it's the same thing. It's about just doing the tiniest steps, breaking it down. Like when I wrote my book, my goal each day was to write 3 sentences, and that was it. I had the smallest goal ever, because if I thought about, oh my God, I've got to write a book, all of a sudden the overwhelm would just be like so much. The self-talk of you can't do that, who do you think you are, would come up. So if you have a goal of something like write 3 sentences, I'm not saying that they have to be good. I'm not saying anything about the sentences. I'm saying you write 3. And that for me kept me going. And some days I would just write 3 sentences and be like, do you know what? I'm done for the day. But most days I would say once I'd started, I could just keep going. And it's about starting. A lot of us get so overwhelmed that we just can't start. And so if you remove the overwhelm with a tiny little goal, just doing 5 minutes here and there, just do a couple of sentences, just do 10 press-ups or something. If you make it really small, you want to make it as small as when you say it to yourself, your brain goes, I can do that. If you say, I'm going to write 2 pages today, my brain goes, no. If I say I'm going to write a paragraph today, my brain goes, meh. If I say I'm going to write 3 sentences, my brain goes, yeah, I can do it. So you want it to be the point where your brain goes, yeah, because then you can sit down and start. And then from that point, you might then end up doing more and more and more. And that for me is a huge tip in like getting that overwhelm just off the plate.
Julia, which role does actually consistency play here? And is there a way for us to kind of rewire our brains so hard things become easier in the long run?
The brain encodes information by repetition. And if you repeat something over and over again, and it depends on the complexity of the activity that you're doing, but if you are consistent with the activity, that is changing the architecture of the brain. That is enabling connections to be formed whereby, because you've done it so many times, the brain can predict the outcome a bit better. The worst state for a brain to be in is being uncertain. And if you go to do something new, the brain can't really predict how something's going to go. If it's seen someone, it goes, okay, I've seen that on the TV before, it might go like this. But if you haven't done it, then it's going to be really difficult. And if something is quite effortful, then if you do it the first few times, the brain might go, no, you don't want to do that again. You know, it didn't really turn out the way you wanted. But with a lot of things, you just need to be consistent, which is why the small goals is really, really important. But having this consistency over time, if you say turn up to your desk at the same time every day and just work, all of a sudden that'll start to become second nature. That will just be part of your routine, because the brain has associated 7 o'clock in the morning with I'm at my desk and I'm doing work. The drama is gone because those connections have been formed, the association has been made, and you will sit and you will work. So yeah, it's the repetition element, which I think is really important, which is why getting rid of that overwhelm is key. And then on the other flip side, it's the emotional component, so the reward and making it nice and fun, that also will help you to do it. But yeah, I think being consistent and not expecting big massive things is definitely key to making any progress.
Especially when we are trying to do something new, we do face lots of uncertainty. And we might really fear that this thing might go terribly wrong. How do you think can we let go a bit of this underlying fear?
I think it's quite interesting to use the idea of nothing in life is certain except uncertainty to your advantage, because you can't really predict how things will go. Something could just happen tomorrow and you go, oh my God, didn't expect that. And you can also say, well, because I'm just expecting this to go terribly wrong, doesn't mean it's going to. It doesn't mean that at all. That's one option of many. I like to sometimes write loads of different options of like, okay, I think if I'm dwelling on, oh, this is going to be awful, I say, okay, think of 10 other alternatives of how it's going to be. And all of a sudden you say, okay, it's not definitely going to be awful.
When we are trying to get something done, it sometimes happens that these distracting thoughts come up into our minds, like, I want to check my emails, I want to check my phone, and this can really make us defocus and also procrastinate. So why does this actually happen, and what can we do about it so we can actually procrastinate less?
Procrastination is a choice. It's a choice between getting rid of the stress and doing something which is nice, or doing the task which is causing the stress. So it's no wonder, like, there's no wonder that we pick to go and scroll on Instagram for an hour, because that is soothing and more relaxing. If you're trying to do anything new, if you're trying to push yourself out your comfort zone, you're always going to face procrastination. Like, it's inevitable. And I am a big believer in, just because you feel like you need to procrastinate, that doesn't mean like I'm doomed to procrastinate. There are ways that you can manage it and sort of make the choice for your long-term self and your long-term goals in that moment. And one of them I always find is just like set a timer. So if you're trying to do work, I will say, okay, I really want to scroll on my phone now. I'm just going to wait for 5 minutes and see how that goes. And it's going back to that really small goal. If you have something that's really small, you could say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do that small thing, and then if I want to check my phone, I can still do it if I want to. I normally do 25 minutes on, and then I've got a 5-minute break. And what that does then as well is when you're working, you know that's coming up. So when you go, oh, I really do want to check my emails, it's like, well, I can check them in 12 minutes. So and the world's not going to end. So you've got that built-in time to be able to be distracted, and then you can come back to your work. So I think that's one thing. I also like to have a list next to me while I'm working, and I write down when these thoughts come up of like, oh, check what time it is in New York right now, something like that. I'll write it on a piece of paper, because a lot of the time these thoughts are not actual things that I want to know. It's just ways my brain's trying to distract me and move me away from the task that I'm finding stressful, because it means a lot to me. So I write down all these things, and then at my break point I check them and go, oh my god, like how many times my brain tried to distract me and what random information it wanted to know, which I actually did not want to know. Like a lot of the time the things that come up are just nonsense. So I think that's also a good one, is to like write it down. And then procrastination, a big element of why we get it is because of our brain's present bias, and our brain likes to think about the here and now. So it's thinking, I'm stressed, we should move away from the stress. So I like to think about what would happen if I skipped this thing once. Probably not much. What would happen if I skipped it 5 times? Okay, it wouldn't be too bad, but I wouldn't make the progress. What if I skipped it 50 times, 100 times? And all of a sudden, if you have this idea in front of you, you could even write it down of like, if I skip this 100 times, this will be the consequence. And it's sort of reminding you of like why you're doing this right now. And if you think about it as well, the more you skip something, the more likely it will become a habit to skip it. It's the terrible way the brain works, the repetition side of stuff. So if you're repeatedly skipping something, if you're getting to your desk at 7 and then scrolling on your phone, the habit you're going to be forming is, I sit at my desk and scroll on my phone. You're not going to be forming the thing you want to form. So I think there's a saying in Atomic Habits by James Clear that you can miss something once but never miss a second time. It's that element of, you know, don't be consistent with missing, because if you are, that's building a habit of missing.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it and found it super interesting, as I personally did. I really enjoyed my conversation with Julia. I hope you did as well. If you did, I would be super grateful if you'd subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you very soon in one of my new and next videos.